Welcome to Filibusted Live. I am Ryan Howard, and we are going to go through the headlines today. We've only got two headlines today because that's what everybody is talking about. And then I'm going to have Troy on as a special guest, and we're going to dive deep into what is going on between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. So first, though, we need to talk about this new travel ban that is back in the news. And so we see here that the infamous travel bans. So some people like it, some people don't. But this is affecting citizens from a dozen different countries. So the White House announced the travel ban just yesterday, and it's going to be barring individuals from specific countries from entering into the U.S. And these countries that are targeted have a history of antagonistic relations with the U.S. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And this ban comes from national security concerns and is set to be effective June 9th, so just a few days from today. And this comes just after recent immigration concerns related to the deportation of suspected gang members to El Salvador, as well as a recent terrorist attack in Boulder Springs, Colorado. So, wow, what countries are we talking about here? Well, there's actually 12 countries that have an outright ban and then 7 others with partial bans. So the list of the 12 are Afghanistan, Myanmar, Chad, Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea. I looked at these, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. And so, as you know, this is supposed to be more legally defensible to where it doesn't open up the door for this being like this racist or discrimination or anything like it was with this so-called Muslim ban back in his first travel ban. But there's also these 7 countries, which would be Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan, and Venezuela. And so those are the ones that have a little bit more selective restrictions. But it's going to be interesting to see what we have coming out of this. So there's obviously an anticipation of immigration rights groups coming up and attempting to sue the administration. And so that's why this is supposed to be having a more strong legal standing. So that they can not have these so-called religious liberties violated and that sort of thing, which actually there's a big discussion about that as to what kind of does anybody really actually have a right to immigrate to the U.S. And I would say that really is not the case, but there are legal proceedings for people who are already here. But obviously those get thrown out the window when somebody is on a terrorist watch list. And so that basically removes some of the due process requirements. And so that's another topic, but the White House released a statement focusing on terrorism abroad and as being the reason for the ban. And they gave an example. They said the United States government has identified Somalia as a terrorist safe haven. Terrorists use regions of Somalia as safe havens from which they plan, facilitate, and conduct their operations. So a lot more to come on that. It's going to be interesting. We'll be tracking that here. And now let's go ahead and dive into the big topic. Now, I mentioned there's only 2 topics, that travel ban topic and what's going on between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. And that's because if we covered all the other news, we would just be covering how other people are also talking about Elon Musk and Trump. It seems like everybody just stopped what they're doing and is now focusing on this. So I'm going to do a quick rundown on the back and forth for you here, and then we'll get Troy on and we'll get into some of this. So Elon goes on a rampage. So his opposition to the new tax bill was not a secret, but that's now escalated into a full-blown attack on Trump. So he called the bill, said it's filled with pork, and he was just generally criticizing it, and he really dialed it up. And I will say, we did a huge live stream yesterday, and we really went deep into this bill, and Reese provided us a spreadsheet going into some of the details, and we gave lots of insights and ins and outs and all the different things to consider when talking about this bill. And so that's something that it seems like people are picking sides now, Team Elon or Team Trump. But I think the right place is, we're criticizing this bill along with Elon. I mean, there's lots of issues in this bill, but there's good things in it, like defunding Planned Parenthood. That's probably my favorite thing in the bill, but because we don't need our tax dollars paying to fund abortions. But it's interesting, though, because this has really escalated. So let's get into some of this here. So after calling it filled with pork, so Musk turned again and said he attacked Trump and said Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. Now, I noticed that I did not get through some of these corresponding things here. So we saw a couple of articles here. So I want to make sure I get that. But this feud really has escalated. So he says Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. And then he says, without me, Trump would have lost the election. Dems would control the House and the Republicans would be 51-49 in the Senate. And so he didn't really go into any evidence for that. But he says, mark this post for the future and the truth will come out. So Trump responded and on Truth Social, and he says the easiest way to save money in our budget billions and billions of dollars, is to terminate Elon's governmental subsidies and contracts. And so to give you an idea, the total revenue for SpaceX and Tesla from federal unclassified contracts since the year 2000 is $22.5 billion. And so Musk responds on X and says, go ahead, make my day, and then replied yes to another X user's post that was talking about replacing Trump with Vance through impeachment. So this is really escalated. So Trump responded. It says, Elon was wearing thin. I asked him to leave. I took away his EV mandate that forced everyone to buy electric cars that nobody wanted, and that he knew he knew for months that I was going to do. And he just went crazy. And so Musk responded saying Trump's comments were an obvious lie and so sad. And so there's no clear evidence to support the claim that EV mandates were in the bill were available or unavailable to him. So who knows what the truth is there. I mean, I saw a thing where Elon says he didn't see the bill beforehand, but that doesn't really mean anything, because people talk about things with advisors and all kinds of things. So, I mean, yeah, he can. That's kind of what happens in politics. People can say something that's technically true, but the spirit of it is irrelevant. I mean, it's really irrelevant. Like, yeah, he didn't see the bill, but it's kind of irrelevant. If they're talking about, here's 10 key things that are in the bill, certainly he knew about it. The public, we knew about a lot of what was in the bill. So I'm certain that we can be certain he knew more about what was in the bill. And so he didn't, it says, Trump didn't explicitly say the EV mandate was in the bill, but he likely referred to the revoking of Biden's executive order that directed manufacturers to produce 50% EVs by 2030. If you know Trump at all, if you know his mandate, if you know the way he talks and what he does, if you've been to any of his rallies or watched him for 5 minutes, you know that these kinds of things from the Biden administration or the Biden regime got to go. I mean, you don't need to be deep into Trump's administration to know that these crazy things and these mandates need to go. That's just a basic platform thing. So Trump has been known to refer to that executive order as the EV mandate. And so even though that's not technically a mandate, but we know that government sets direction and policies. And so I think we are ready now. So you kind of got caught up. There's a lot more details there. And so let's go ahead and bring Troy on, and we're going to dive into some of this. Is Elon right? Is Trump close with Epstein, or is Elon projecting? I mean, who knows what's going on with that? So, hey, Troy, welcome. I got to get you mute your mic there.
All right, can you hear me now?
There we go. Yes.
What's up, Brian? Hey, everybody. Man, this is crazy. That last night the news is going nuts, and I would have been paying more attention to it if I wasn't putting my 5 kids to bed. But okay, I'm going to start with a joke, because this is a little bit of a dark. The whole Epstein conversation in general is a little dark. So I'm going to start with this joke. If y'all didn't know, we forgot to cover this week, that Biden has officially responded to the auto pen investigation. I don't know if you knew this, Ryan, or not, but this is what Biden said officially. He said, "Let me be clear. I made the decisions during my presidency. I made the decisions about the pardons, executive orders, legislation, and proclamations. Any suggestion that I didn't is ridiculous and false. And this statement has been officially signed by former President Joe Biden." So there you go. He's got his official signature on the bottom of that statement, so we know it's him.
Oh, right, man.
So if you don't get that joke, you'll get it later.
That's pretty funny.
But yeah, okay, jumping into this, is Elon Musk right about Trump? That's a big question, because I think it kind of threw some people off when they saw that. It's a little bit of a like, oh no moment. Is this real? Is he just mad? Is he just frustrated? Is there some evidence? I mean, because we saw Elon Musk come into the government, right, through Doge and get access to a lot of different things. I just want to start off the bat and say, just because you're a part of the club now and you're in one of the government departments, whatever, whether it be a new one like Doge or an old one, that doesn't mean you have access to all the files. There's no way that Doge had any right or any reason to be in the Epstein files in the first place. So to think that Elon has some sort of insider information, I think is a little bit ridiculous. That would be my take on, and just speaking with people that work in the government that have access to files. The people that have access to the files, sometimes they don't even have access to the files that they have access to, because they have to go through two other people just to read the file that they are supposed to have access to. So it's ridiculous. So, okay. But here's the other thought is, what are the Epstein files? Because I think this would help us understand whether there's any sort of legitimacy to this claim or not. What are the files themselves? Well, it's a very intensive investigation. So there's a huge list of names that show up in the Epstein files because they investigated Epstein, everybody he knew, everybody he did business with, everybody he was friends with, everybody he happened to be at a party with, whoever it was. And the weird thing about it is there's Epstein himself kept weird, lengthy records about the people that he met, important people, rich people that he met. And so anybody that showed up in any of his personal records, and from his travels and from all the people he talked to and met, like, they are going to be in the files. They're just going to show up there. But there's a huge difference and a huge distinction between somebody that's in the Epstein files, which is probably every rich person that was in Palm Beach at the time, and somebody that's on the Epstein client list. Those are two wildly different things. So here's a bit of information that should help. Trump himself has already been found in the Epstein files with what's been released, but there's no information there that would incriminate him at all. So this is already officially released. Yes, obviously Trump knew Epstein. There's videos of him or photos of him a couple times having met, at a party or whatever. But so did, every single wealthy person at that time probably at one point rubbed shoulders with him, or walked by or said hello, or like, oh, I know who you are, So there's no incrimination there just because his name is in the files. There's a very different list that we would have to look at to know if somebody is, could be holding any guilt or not. What do you think about that, Ryan?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, I've had my picture with Donald Trump, and that's like taking and associating that I love and approve everything he's ever done in his past because I had a picture with the guy. And
right.
Like, that's insanity. Now, I want to say that I'm not here to defend Trump and to say definitively, oh, he's not with Epstein, get that out of your mouth. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is let's evaluate the merits. Let's evaluate the merits of what has been said and what has been provided, because we're critical thinkers. We don't just take what we're told and just take it down. We actually got to think about it ourselves. And so I will say there's another thing called the Epstein flight log, which is not the same thing as the Epstein files. And it's not the same thing as taking a picture with somebody or being sort of in the same circles as somebody. But, I think that let's talk a little bit about Epstein. Who was Jeffrey Epstein? So, I mean, I think it's pretty well established that he was a kind of a covert intelligence operative, like an asset that was used to compromise people. And I would say well established because if you look at people because he was basically known as a wealthy financier and a money manager, like that's what he was known as. But if you actually typically somebody in that position would have had a history and a story of coming into the money, or would have had a history of trading, or would have had a history of investing or running companies or doing anything at all in that realm. And he did not have that. And so this really, this is for educational purposes only, and this is really just speculation, but it really appears, and there's many people who have talked about this, like Whitney Webb and all these others on PBD podcasts and all these other places that are talking, and Mike Bentz and all that are talking about how this is just a cover story. And he really cultivated this image as a successful in the financial world, in a social circle, and just basically was to have access to all these people and do what's called honeypot schemes, which is where they compromise people either into sexual or financial situations, and that can be blackmailed and used against them. And so this is sort of what Jeffrey Epstein's image is.
Right. Yeah. And I think that raises a good point. And you mentioned real quick, I don't want to miss this. You mentioned the flight logs, and there is evidence of Trump's name being on a flight log in that investigation in the Epstein files in that report, but he is not on a flight log to Epstein's Island or anything like that. He's on a flight log from one state to another state, and that's it. And so that's where his name shows up on a flight log. So That
Yeah.
is very important. It's like, oh, is it a crime to fly from wherever it was, like New York to Florida or something like that? It's like that doesn't make any sense at all, to assume something based off of that. But
Yeah.
you're talking about, I want to get into the psychological perspective a little bit, because that's what you raised here is this honeypot scheme, this ability to hold weight over somebody's life. There's a proverb that talks about how a wicked man flees though no one pursues, but the righteous are as bold as a lion. Now, obviously, there's a spiritual truth to that, a spiritual side, but I want to look at it just from the practical side. There's a practical boldness that comes with thinking that you're in the right.
Mm-hmm.
When you know you're in the wrong, you're going to be slimy, and you're going to, you might still try to get your way. But when you think you're in the right, which I believe Trump does in this case, you're going to act a certain way. And Trump is one of the boldest people we've ever seen come onto the political stage. And here's if you're looking at Trump's life from a psychological perspective, he doesn't drink. He never has, which is crazy for somebody that's come from a secular business world, arena to be in that position. And it's like, okay, in Trump's mind, if you're just looking at his habits and you're looking at the way he acts, he's got nothing to hide. Now, I'm not calling him a perfect person. I'm not saying he has a perfect past or anything like that. But in his mind, he doesn't have anything to hide, right? And so that's very different than what we see with a lot of the other people that have been incriminated. A lot of the other people that do have this crazy thing hanging over them psychologically from their past. So that's one thing. The other side would be there's Elon's psychological issues that he's facing, right? The things he's dealing with. I want to bring up a couple points. The legislation. So like you said, we covered this bill in full yesterday on a live stream. Y'all go check it out. Reese did an amazing job of breaking it down. We looked at what is the bill actually going to do? Is there really going to be a deficit? I finally said that word right. Thank God for the pronunciation videos on Google, and I can look up how to say normal words. But are we really going to wind up in a deficit? We answered that question yesterday. Very, very interesting results. And I think Reese did an amazing job. Y'all go check it out. But the legislation would eliminate a credit worth as much as $7,500 for buyers of some Tesla models and other electric vehicles by the end of 2025, 7 years ahead of schedule. Okay. That would cause a roughly $1.2 billion hit to Tesla's full-year profit, according to a JP Morgan analyst. So Elon Musk is walking away from, hey, I did y'all a favor. I did the American people a favor. Trump, I did you a favor. Obviously he made that claim that Trump wouldn't have won without him. I think there could be some merit to that. I don't think it's provable, but I think there's a potential that maybe Trump wouldn't have won if Elon hadn't stepped in, right? He obviously kind of saved the day by reinforcing Trump's funding for his campaign. The funds were running low. Elon stepped in and said, I got you covered. So there was a lot of things that happened that Elon did that Trump kind of needed in the moment, right? I think it still was Trump's his campaign that won the day. I don't think it was Elon specifically, but Elon definitely played a part in that. But he's walking away from, I just did you a big favor, and I just did the American people a big favor, and now I feel personally hurt because of this legislation. It's not just, I think it's a bad legislation. I mean, Reese did a really good job yesterday of breaking down why this potentially is a very good bill that's being passed, right? And so it's really not a matter of that. I think it's more a matter of like he's personally feeling attacked, even though he's done something nice. He feels like he should be watched out for. He should have his interests looked out for, and he's not, right? And so I think there's that. Okay, here's another thing. Elon Musk, and this people that follow these stories know this. Some people may not, but he likes to be in the spotlight. One of the things that he's done a few times is he's gotten on to an online game. Diablo 4 was one of them. I've got the name of the other one here. Path of Exile 2 was another one. He got on this live stream one time, right? And he had hundreds of thousands of people watching because they like the game, and they also are like, wow, Elon Musk plays these games, that's awesome. They all get on to watch, and viewers started to notice that his character level, I think it was Path of the Exile 2, his character level is like 97, which is like a world-class level, and the people have estimated it takes like 40 hours of playtime a week to be at that level, to be that high. And they're like, there's no way. They're just, he doesn't say anything about it. He just like kind of like plays it off. And people are thinking there's no way that Elon Musk is this good at this game when he's got all these companies to run and all this stuff. And they quickly realize he's actually breaking the terms of use, because terms of use say you can't have multiple users sharing a character. You've got to do it yourself if you want to be the best, right? If you want to be way up here. And so he had somebody else playing the game for him 40 hours a week that he was paying probably, or he bought a character from somebody else so that he could jump on a live stream and be like, look, I'm so good or whatever. So it's just this idea of he literally wanted to look like the best in the world, even though he didn't put in the work. And it was obvious because for video game users, you'll understand this. He wasn't even picking up the items you're supposed to pick up. He was missing the important things that you should have known if you really were a world-class character. So it's very obvious that he was kind of lying about that. Right. Yeah. And later he admitted it wasn't him that had built the character up and that he was using somebody else's character. But he's got this big ego. He wants to look like the best. Right. And he obviously is very hurt right now with what Trump has decided to do, with what the Congress has decided to do. And he's feeling like, hey, I should get something out of this. And I think what we're seeing, last night I told my kids, I didn't give them any details, but I just said, I was like, y'all know who Elon Musk is, right? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, y'all know who Trump is, right? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, they're in a big fight right now. And my kids are like, oh, they're acting like big babies. And I was like, yeah, they're kind of acting like big babies, Yeah. And then my kids back and forth are like, no, you said that you said that, and then I was like, that's kind of what they sound like right now, probably Elon Musk more so. I think Trump has shown a lot more maturity than Elon in this case, with some of the ways he's responded to some things. Yeah. I mean, obviously, he's kind of gotten some jabs in there and stuff. What do you think? I know I'm going all over the map here, but I'm trying to look at it from the perspective of taking a step back, away from the emotions, away from the heat of it, and why would Elon Musk be responding this way? And maybe all of this, and even that jab about the Epstein files and all that kind of stuff, is just him getting his feelings hurt and responding in a way that's not very mature.
Yeah, I think that's pretty evident. I mean, I think this is really, it was really odd. Like, I don't think any of us expected it. And I mean, I expected like a parting of ways maybe down the line, or just kind of like a quiet thing. But this, complete public explosion. But it was kind of like, I mean, there had to be something under this, assuming this is not like fabricated, like a controlled opposition, which I don't think it is. But there had to be something. There's something there. I mean, we could talk about that, but I think there was something under the surface. I mean, think about this. Yesterday, Elon had, I think there was like a 14 or 16 or 17% drop in Tesla stock, which in one day, which is the hugest drop in the history of the company, as far as I understand. And so that's not a good day. And then he I don't know, he was at the White House with a black eye, and like, what is going on with Elon, And I know there's lots of other stuff about other things he's involved in, and I don't know, habits that he has that maybe he's not in the best circles. And so it's just kind of like something's going on, and he kind of snapped. And he came out like this. And so both Elon and Trump are kind of like, I'm going to do what I want to do, and you fall in line, or I don't care. Like, he's even said, I'm going to Elon. But the approach, Trump has taken a lot less bombastic approach to going after people than he did in his first term. And I think that some people are frustrated, including myself, with that he hasn't taken such a drastic approach against the establishment. And that a lot of that was seen in this bill. And so, I mean, I think that is right to be angry about, but it does not explain this kind of a reaction, because I think it's pretty obvious that he would have been involved in conversations and know what was coming. And I don't think anything in this bill was a surprise to Musk, because none of it was a surprise to us. So I don't think, and there's no explanation for this. And so he just kind of, it seems like he snapped. And so, I think the psychological angle is very interesting. But I think it's one thing to, kind of go after Trump and attack him for, some of the more professional things that he hasn't gotten done, or political things. But to throw out the Epstein thing is just really odd to me.
It's on. Hey, I think you're right, man. I think some people are a little disappointed that Trump hasn't done more against the establishment, but I honestly think that's probably a case of, I think it would have been different if it was his first time around, or if there hadn't been a 4-year gap between his first term and his second term. And because Trump is going into this term thinking, at some point, people are going to consider me a lame duck. Now, I personally think we're going to see less of a lame duck situation than we've ever seen in the history of the United States. Because I don't think Trump's going to stop. I think he's going to keep pushing and pushing, and people are going to realize that till the end. But I think there is there is a little bit of a, what do we have the potential and the ability to do in a 4-year period that could actually get done? So I think there is that, but I could be wrong. Yeah, a couple quotes that I think sum up a lot of people's feelings about it. This is a quote from somebody who only has X user who only has 200 followers, who Elon Musk actually responded to. And they said, "This is a shame, this back and forth. You're both better than this. Cool off and take a step back for a couple days." And then Musk responded, "Good advice." And then he said, "Okay, we won't decommission Dragon." That was one of the things he was like essentially threatening to do. Another post from Bill Ackman, billionaire. He's an ally of both Trump and Musk. He said that they should make peace for the benefit of our great country. And Musk responded to him as well, saying, "You're not wrong." So I think we're seeing Musk kind of cool off a little bit and start to maybe think critically again instead of thinking only emotionally. But yeah, it just really is. It's really kind of nuts. I do like the way that Trump has responded to an extent, though. Because he has said things like, "This is sad. I expected more from Elon than this." I think he could have gotten really nasty, and even some of the things that Trump has said in the past, I'm a little shocked that he's responded the way he has now. And I'm a little bit like, I don't know. I'm like, there's my man. He's, he's like, good job, way to go.
Yeah, it's very, presidential, kind of how he has responded.
Right.
And so I think that, that's great. I think I've been impressed with that response as well. I think that's the right way to go. But just when it comes to actually, internal workings of the Republican Party and getting things through Congress, that's where he needs to be starting to smack some people around a little bit and put things in order. Because now, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just saying, somebody you mentioned this earlier. Somebody else left a comment saying, I think it's like I think it was a setup, essentially, like to throw people off or something. And I'm wondering, like, what could it be if it was? I don't know if it necessarily is. I don't really think it was, because Tesla took a 14% drop. I don't think Elon would have been okay with that. But I'm thinking, like, what could that be? And I think maybe it is the what you talked about earlier. Maybe it is the travel ban, because that's really, really, really controversial. Like,
yeah, but
really upset about it.
I don't know. Part of me is like, why is that controversial? It's if it's a terrorism thing and it's concerns, and there's all. So that's a whole nother conversation. But I agree completely. Anytime something big like this blows up and everybody's talking about it, I'm kind of thinking, okay, hold on. Just let me get my feet under me, get my bearings straight. What was I looking at before? And you can't take your eye off the ball. Like, for me, that's just like, okay, yeah, what is going on behind the scenes? We have countless examples. Should put a list together of these kinds of things. But I don't know. I will say that, like when Democrats are in, it's almost like Democrats want to be in power and Republicans want them to be in power. Because when Democrats are in power, they move their agendas forward. They're willing to take a short-term loss for future gains, like in the future, like come back, like, well, they already destroyed it. They got more bureaucracy and they got more red tape. Right. They got this. So they lose the next round and they come back and it's still there. Whereas Republicans want Democrats in power because then they got an excuse for why they're not doing anything. And now they're not doing what they talk about and promises and all this kind of stuff, instead of like now where it's just, well, we got to get midterms coming up and we got to get elected. And it's kind of like, we need people who are willing to do with courage and do the right thing that may cause them to not get reelected, but it's the right thing and it's why they were elected. And so that's what we really need. So if it's kind of like, more of that.
Yeah,
I hope so.
See more of that. I think Trump's setting up, just his getting elected in 2016 and some of the kind of throwing off the establishment. I know he hasn't done as much as some people have wanted him to, but even with what he's doing this term, I think he's setting up a precedent for other people to come along and say, hey, I want to keep doing what he was doing, to an extent. Not everything, because I don't agree with everything he's done, but a lot of the things he's done are things that needed to be done for a long time, right? So it's like a lot of the moves, he's moving things forward a little bit, and pushing the line, and somebody else needs to get in there and keep pushing it, not just as the president, but in Congress, across the board, So I think he's creating a precedent for the next generation, and I say next generation, meaning next wave of the electorate to make a decision. Do I want to be like these people in the past who just kind of like, I'm here. I got elected, I want to keep my position, or do I want to actually make a positive change and do the right thing? And they've kind of seen some precedent for that, and then they're able to make that decision. I think we're going to see a lot more of that, a lot more passion behind politics that we haven't seen in a long time. People wanting to do the right thing. So that's my hope for the future, for the next 4 years after this, And I mean, the next decade, that's what I'm hoping for. So any final thoughts? We're approaching 30 minutes now, so we got to hop off, but
yeah, I think I agree completely. I think there's we've seen a resurgence of interest in what's going on in the political world, because we see Trump sort of pull at a very minimum. He pulled back the curtain and said, look, this is what's going on, and showed it and exposed a lot more of it, to where people that weren't really paying attention are now saying, wow, what? That's what's been happening. We need to pay attention. And so now they're awake. And now we even saw like people running for office that are principled people, that are willing. Like I even saw in the Iowa legislature where there's an establishment there. They have the trifecta Republican, the House, the Senate, and the governor, but they have not. It's not one of the most conservative states. But there was a freshman class that came in when I ran in 2020 that that kind of destroyed the agenda of the establishment. Like they couldn't do what they wanted. Like they had power because it was people who are actually going to stand on the convictions that they say they have. And so that can happen in any state. That can happen in the U.S. Congress. And the more that we wake up and the more that we tell our political leaders what we actually expect of them and hold them accountable and are willing to primary people or are willing to just step out, and there's more that are willing to do that. And so the more people that are paying attention, a well-informed electorate, that is what will solve the issues from a legislative perspective in this country, and the church waking up and getting involved and sort of saying the way government needs to be done. These are the things that are going to make the difference and move the needle for the future. So,
I agree.
Troy, it was great having you on. This was great. And I don't know if you got any final word you want to share before we wrap.
That's it. I mean, the only final thing is you made me think of Elon coming out and saying we need to form a new party. So maybe that's a discussion for another time. But I think that was part of the emotional, like, just like leaping off the dock as well. So,
Yep. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us, and make sure you come back next week. We'll be back at 9:30 on Central Time on Monday, and we will see you then.